and welcome to Ask Zenatta Anything About Zoho, affectionately known as AZAAZ. This is Volume 1, Issue Number 5, and from Zenatta Consulting, I'm Brett Martin, and I am here with Greg Belknap, Tyler Colt, and Drew Brockbank, and we are going to answer all of your questions. And we've got a lot today, guys. We've got 20 of them, so let's get right to it, and we will kick it off with Greg.
Yes, our first question comes from our YouTube video going over CRM's newest features. This comes from Yubong, who asks, how do I automate emails to go out on specific dates, such as holidays, to my contacts? Good question. There's a couple of different ways. If we're trying to stay entirely within the CRM, then your best bet would probably be a scheduled function, which has the benefits of you just say what date it's running on each time. So let's say you have, a Labor Day email going out to your folks. You can say every year on Labor Day, send this out. It does depend on how many contacts you've got. That is a lot of emails you're going to be sending out. And so your scheduled function might not be able to run on everybody all at once. So I don't know, you guys can share your thoughts, but I'm wondering if this might be better actually just as a campaign, because you can schedule a campaign to go out at a certain time. And so I would say just at the beginning of the year, create, all of your campaigns, or you could create, maybe like a workflow that would just grab any contacts that are coming in and schedule those at the beginning of the year to send out to any active contacts.
Yeah, I would think campaigns is probably the best way to do it, right? Just because the CRM does have some limits in mass emailing and workflow emailing, where if you've got a decently sized customer base or contact base, you might end up bumping into some of those limits.
Now, I guess if you only have like 3 holidays that you're going to do, you could maybe set up 3 date fields on all of your contacts, and then you could run workflow rules running on those dates. But that seems a little involved.
Where campaigns would just solve it.
If you had to use CRM to send the emails, you can use Zoho Flow and schedule from there. But like you mentioned, campaigns is your best bet. If you just wanted to set up a few for a couple holidays, it's the best way to go. Alrighty, so this one's from Bonnie. Does anyone else use Divi and might be looking for a Zoho Books/Divi integration? I'm migrating away from QuickBooks Online into Zoho Books, and the only major downside is that there is no Divi integration for Zoho Books. I'm looking for anyone who might want to share the cost of having such an integration created. I have reached out to Zoho as well as Divi, and nothing is in the works on either end, so I'm trying to see what my options are. That one created. So good question. I mean, this one's a little tough, right? When you're doing third-party integrations, it really depends on what you want to accomplish. So the reason I smile, I mean, Tyler, Brett, Greg, we've all dealt with like custom third-party integrations. I feel like because most people use these out-of-box third-party integrations, we're kind of used to just like that field mapping setup, you plug it in and you're good to go. But with this, it's a little different. So when we approach third-party integrations, our first questions are, do you need a one-way integration? Do you need a two-way integration? If you have a two-way integration, what system's going to play the source of truth, right? If it's a one-way integration, when do you want to push data over? Do we want to do this on a scheduled basis? So to answer your question, it depends, which is a very consultancy answer. But what we want to do is, if we were working with you, we want to list out all the requirements and then go from there. But to answer your question head on, as long as Divi's got an API and it's got functionality to update the records that you're wanting to integrate with, then you should be able to do it. But this is really going to be a custom project. There's nothing out of the box that I know of, guys, that's going to be able to do a Divi integration. So,
yeah, nothing native. I mean, with something like this, you could probably get away running it on a schedule. And I think it'd probably be one way because Divi's running your expenses and Books is kind of capturing them. So hopefully it would be on the easier end of the spectrum. You never know, right? It's put a big asterisk on that based on that Divi API and if it works and what it does and does it say, or does it do what it says on the box? But, generally these things are possible. It always just comes down to the nitty gritty, right? How instantly do you need the data, right? Who needs access to it? What specific data are you pulling, right, from Divvy, because you could be using that app more than one way. So
Yep.
yeah, that's where a lot of those dots come from when we're talking about these
For
types
sure.
of builds.
A good way to start out with, when you're approaching problems like these, is checking things like Zapier to see maybe there's not something that can directly integrate your two softwares, but that maybe something like Zapier maybe could talk to Divvy and at least get some info and then push it to Zoho Books. Then if you can set up a seemingly reliable flow of data, and it's like, okay, no, this works and this is working for us, then you would want to reach out to someone like Zenatta Consulting to say, hey, we have this flow that we've sort of designed. Now we want to take out the middleman of Zapier, and we'd like to be able to have the two systems just talk directly to each other.
Yeah. I think that's a great start. And if you were to start like that, other requirements would come about, right? You'd be like, oh, we have to bring in all of our accounts into Divvy if we want to do this right. So I think that's a good place to
Yeah,
start.
I mean, that's way to kind of pre-scope things.
Yeah.
And Bonnie,
Yep.
I mean, if you made the leaps to Zoho Books, you might want to check out Zoho Expense. I mean, it's not probably not what you want to hear because you're a Divvy user, but Zoho Expense has come a long way, Tyler. We've seen a ton of changes. We've been talking about on the CRM Zen show. They've done a lot to bring it up to speed. So
Yeah, it's worth a
That's an
review.
option.
And I think actually Bonnie's got her kickoff scheduled with John on our finance team. So they'll probably be talking through that.
Fantastic.
This one comes from a Club Zenatta post. This is Nick asking about he's using the WooCommerce integration with campaigns and finding a little trouble getting those that are triggering it to be connected to a CRM contact. So he's run some tests with an email that he can guarantee is in both the CRM and campaigns. Could be grabbed by Sales IQ, but still isn't quite connecting. With the e-commerce flow that campaigns has with WooCommerce, there's just a certain level of, the person has to get a certain level deep into that WooCommerce checkout before that email is truly saved and captured. So unless the person in WooCommerce already has an account somewhere, or they've bought from you previously, and now if they've signed in and they're shopping, adding to their cart, and then they abandon it, then it's going to be able to stay connected. But otherwise, if it's somebody who's just kind of going in and browsing, even types in their email, grabs into the box and then leaves, there's nothing there that can guarantee that it's going to grab that data and match it appropriately. There's a certain threshold that they have to pass before that connection will get made. And it sounds like probably what's happening is people just aren't moving far enough in that flow to get it to trigger.
Alrighty, getting into the next question here. This one comes from David Evans. He asked over in Club Zenatta, repeating task edits in CRM. So when editing a repeating task in CRM, the edit only applies to the individual task, not the full series. In order to edit the whole series of repeating tasks, one needs to turn off repeating, save, edit, turn it back on, save again. This isn't bad, but except if the originating task is completed, then turning off repeating deletes all open tasks. The only solution is to clone the completed task, make the edits, and save it as a new repeating task. So the solution for this really does depend on what is the nature of these repeating tasks, and can they be created in a different way, right? So there's a lot of different ways to trigger the creation of many tasks out into the future that repeat. Using that little repeating task tool in the task is a little clunky. It does work and it kind of does what it says it does, but you do run into these types of issues where it's just a little bit odd, kind of how it all clicks together. Kind of off the cuff, one way that I thought about doing this is if you wanted to have a record in your CRM, let's say that these tasks are related to a contact. Instead of creating a task, if you had a custom module for a future task scheduler, and you could define some parameters in that module and use it to programmatically create tasks, Then anytime you went back to that module to change something, like if you want to change the task name, it would just start using that now, right? And if there were certain things around, if you make a change there, apply it to all open tasks, those things can be scripted out, right? It would take a little bit of nitty gritty, right? And really define that as an if-then statement. But yeah, I would think something custom here might just solve for a little bit of the clunkiness that you're going to experience with the repeating tasks feature.
Yeah, just setting up like a task template module, essentially.
Yeah,
for those
it's a better name
ones that you
for it.
want to happen
Task
over and
template.
over again. And you could have a little drop down there of like, well, how often is this supposed to happen? Is this something that's going to happen every... And you're talking, I guess, when we're saying repeating tasks, we mean like we're going to create the same kind of task for every contact? Or they're saying it's recurring, right?
Same task over time. Like think about the use case I'm assuming is maybe you've got like gold tier accounts and we need to check in with them once a month. So we just want to have this consistent stream of tasks that are pretty much the same, but just spread over a period of time.
Yeah. And they change.
Hopefully,
we've had some crazy ones. I mean, we had one client that wanted was it once a week that you had to check in, or once a month you had to check in with one of your prospects? And it was one of the tasks had to be a phone call. One of the tasks had to be an email. One of the tasks had to be you took them to lunch, right? And I think those were the three. And I think it was repeating. And if you'd done number 1 and 2, you had to do 3. So it would cycle these by elimination. It would kind of roll them on through. And I don't know. We handled that with workflows and a little deluge, I think, to make it all happen.
Workflows,
checking,
a little bit of brute force. Yeah.
I mean, any of it's possible. It's just you kind of got to maybe more define exactly what you're looking for, right?
Yep. Alrighty. So this is asked by Nick Mitchell on one of our YouTube videos. It's actually a recent one, managing accounting and physical stock levels in Zoho inventory. Shout out to Cody on our team who recorded these. They're very useful. So Nick asks, seems like the quantity in stock field in products and CRM does not sync with stock on hand inventory from books and inventory. That's true. Also looks like the finance module doesn't prompt to create a back order or PO for out of stock items when creating a sales order the same way it would in Zoho inventory. What's the best way to work with this in short inside a CRM? Being able to see things like stock levels would be amazing. So yeah, I'll answer this question in 2 parts, Nick. The first part on pulling in the stock levels, you could definitely do. Just takes a little bit of custom coding. We'd probably run it on a schedule, regularly pull it down, or anytime an item or a transaction is logged, you could script it out to pull that inventory level back to CRM. The other side, and this is one that's sign our petition on this, Nick. I agree it's a little odd, right? There are some of those things that you can do in books, like if you raise a sales order and it's confirmed and the items are out of stock, Zoho Books will allow you to do like a back order on that and just make it into a PO. If you do the same thing in CRM, you are not able to do that. We've solved for these in some ways. Like an example of a roundabout way to solve for it, Nick, is if a sales rep creates a sales order in Zoho Books or in Zoho CRM using the finance integration, you could run a function and check if any of those were out of order and auto create a back order for it using the Books API. But it just requires some custom code. I'll do this on the podcast sometimes, but Zoho, if you're listening, please make the features in parity here. It's a little bit of a shame that there are things we can't do in the CRM that we're able to do on the books and inventory side.
Yeah, Nick, just head over to change.org, and the petition is called Please Zoho Please. And you can sign that. It's an ever-evolving petition that we're putting out there. But, hey, Amy is asking, I'm looking to set up a system in Zoho where one tracks goals and habits for my real estate company. For instance, agents might set a goal to list a certain number of properties each quarter. To achieve that goal, we'll identify the habits or activities needed to get there. I want a system to be dynamic so the goals and activities can be tailored to each agent. There's a lot of moving parts here, Amy. So as I think about this, there are a lot of things you can do. So let's talk the actual results-oriented part of this, like they need to list a certain number of properties. Those are going to be tracked in CRM. You've got listings. They put their listings in. You've got all of that. There is a product that's built into CRM called Motivator, which we don't really talk about that much. It used to be its own project in Zoho, and now it's part of the CRM, but it would fit very well for this. And you can actually have a scoreboard. You can have all your agents and, how many listings they've got, how many phone calls they made, how many sales they've made. You can kind of track all that in Motivator. You also can pull all that data because they're going to be different. Maybe you don't want to have them going against each other, but they could have their own dashboards where they just see their own stuff there as well. Or you could build them a dashboard inside of CRM that would be theirs. Or you could pull all this data up into analytics and you could basically present it all there so everybody could see their own goals and where they're at on this entire thing. And that might go better for habits because habits is going to be completely different. And I would think you'd almost want to have a module in the CRM where people are to, daily put their habits in. What did I do today? I was supposed to make 15 phone calls. I was, if you're in real estate, maybe it's the old school where they're doing a farm. I went to my farm and I walked around. For you guys that don't know, agents will set up an entire, these 8 blocks are mine. And they will constantly farm those 8 blocks, and they'll put those little flags in the lawn, for the 4th of July, and they'll drop off a pumpkin for Halloween. And basically, and their business cards attached to every single bit of it. And they do that. And then when people think about selling their house, they're like, oh, that nice person that stops by all the time. Whatever these tasks are, these habits that they have to do, they're really going to have to put it in CRM. I did these things today. Did you do this, and this? And then you could have also, present, I'm not sure you wouldn't even need analytics for that. You could even just do a simple report or a simple dashboard.
Run some of the habits.
Did they do these certain things? The actual achievements are much easier to measure. And, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. Again, you could do a dashboard, pull in analytics, a whole bunch of different things you can do there. Guys, anything I missed there or thing you'd add?
Yeah, we've done kind of a similar build, in terms of the targets, like if we wanted agents to have different number of listings per quarter, right? You could do that as a goals module. We've actually done this for other real estate agents before where they enter them in, right? Every year they're responsible for entering a set of goals. And then in analytics, we can just blend the outcomes data, which would be deals closed, tasks completed, with that goals data based on kind of matching parameters.
Yeah, just to add to that, when I look at habits, I just think of activities tracking. What activities, like you said, Brett. If they wanted to track some, custom metric or activity, maybe create another module. Maybe just looking at using tasks within being a sub module. I like to use analytics, and when I've done these in the past, exactly what Tyler mentioned, we load up a goals module, we tie in all the data in the back end of Zoho Analytics, and we can build custom reports from there. But if you want to start simple, you just go into Zoho Reports, get a tabular report of what's going on, maybe start there, and then you'll start to feel out, I want this to be visual data, I like it being tabular and simple, and then you can kind of fill your way up from there.
Yeah, it's like the one app Zoho doesn't have is a habit tracker, habit builder, right? So,
not yet.
If you want your agents, there's a great, I think it's relatively, it might even be free. There's an iOS app called Strides. And, basically you said, I need to do this 3 times a week. I need to do this 4 times a week. I need to do these things. And then everybody could do their strides and share it with you, depending on how many agents you have. But there are a lot of those habit builder, habit trackers that are out there.
Yeah, there's that feature in Click, right, where you can just watch all of your employees live. So just get everyone Click, you can watch everybody, and then you can just manually track exactly what everyone's doing, and boom, there's your habit tracker. So you can always try that.
Habit enforcer.
All right, so this one's from Paul Webb. When we visit a customer, sometimes their equipment is unrepairable, and we give them a quote for new equipment. Part of the deal is that if they agree to the new equipment, we cancel the charge for the service call. This normally happens within days. I'm looking for a best practice ideas so that we do not forget to chase those who do not go ahead and owe a service charge, and 2, to remember to delete the invoice, which is now void if they do go ahead. Is there a way of tagging an invoice? So just at the top of my head, for a lot of these, I like to lay out requirements a little more clearly, but if I was just go off of this prompt, what you may want to do is go in the deals module, and a deal just represents an opportunity to do business with someone, right? So If the opportunity arises, you go, the equipment's unrepairable, cool, you could create a deal. And if they're like, you know what, realize this is unrepairable, we want to go with you to purchase the same one. You could also throw in the ID of the invoice for that service call. And you could write a function to say, hey, you know what, if this is deal closed one, you can mark the deal type as, unrepairable check or some kind of type to denote that it was tied to a service call. And then you could write a custom function to reference that invoice and remove it or mark it void, however you want to do that. So a lot of different ways you could go about this. Something Tyler and I mentioned, before the call when we were looking at this question. The best thing you can do in a lot of these cases when, working with someone like us or just looking for someone to give you a more detailed solution is just to outline the exact process via flowchart, list out requirements that you have from it. And from there, that kind of gives us orientation for what you're trying to do. And then we can kind of pitch solutions from there. So that's top of my head. I don't know, guys, if you guys have any other input for solutions, anything else you'd want to try here.
Yeah, you could think about like a blueprint, right? If you're on site and you've got some type of blueprinted process, if you really feel the need to make it very strict, you could go that way. But yeah, I mean, whenever I think something that generates revenue, I think make it a deal, right? In the CRM and track it as a deal. So I'm pretty much on the same page, Drew.
Okay, Bonnie is back and asking, after watching the YouTube video, The Ultimate Guide to Configuring and Optimizing Zoho Inventory 2023, I see 3D Cart has a shopping cart integration on your screenshot at 27 minutes and 2 seconds, but I have fewer options than you. How might I get that integration? Bonnie, I'm not particularly sure. Actually, 3D Cart was purchased by Shift to Shop back in 2020. So, it could be that this is just kind of a legacy thing that's on there, or maybe it was turned on a while back. We, as a partner, sometimes we get access to beta of certain products and things. The things that I don't know about this, though, is if it was a beta, why it would even be there. Because, like I say, November of 2023, 3D Cart was purchased by Shift4Shop. And so it's kind of, it's very odd to me. I wish I had a better answer for you on this, but maybe it's just a beta thing that was turned on.
Maybe it's like legacy stuff in an old demo account, because our demo accounts are kind of old, right? So maybe when that demo was spun up, that was active.
It could be, and I've done some search in the marketplace for 3D Cart and Shift4Shop and all those kind of things, and I really just can't find anything. So this is a non-answer answer, Bonnie. No idea how it got there and why it was there.
All right, next question here comes from Jason Price. He asked this over in Club Zenatta, post titled Departments versus Groups in CRM. So Jason asked, it says here, we've done a pretty lousy job building groups and departments. Can you please explain the difference between them and how they're usually set up? I think there's a little back and forth in Club Zenatta. Follow-up question, essentially trying to figure out if I should be creating a group or a department. Doesn't think it was DES, so we're thinking it's in CRM here. We're talking about groups in CRM. So groups are kind of interesting in CRM because they live outside of the primary kind of role and hierarchy system. Within the CRM, roles kind of stack up, right? So you have a sales rep, they're underneath the sales manager, so that manager sees their data. They're underneath a VP who's under a CEO and so on, all the way up to our AI overlords being on top of all the role hierarchies. Groups are kind of unique in that they live outside of that traditional hierarchy. An example of where you might use a group is, let's say you had 2 roles, sales assistants and support assistants, and you wanted to make a group for just generalized assistants, right? And maybe round robin a certain task through just anyone who's an assistant is qualified to do this. It's kind of odds and ends when you need them, but they're essentially a way to be able to create like a data sharing rule to a subset of users outside of a strict role hierarchy. Alrighty, jumping on into the next question here. This one comes from Nicholas on a YouTube video here, how to integrate QuickBooks with Zoho CRM tutorial. Now, this video, just for context, we're walking through using what's called an XML related list to show QuickBooks data, where the data comes into analytics and we build kind of a special little widget in CRM to show the data in CRM. So it doesn't actually live there, it's just referencing it. So the question asks, hello, is there a way to create a workflow from specific information in a custom related list? We're trying to send an automated message once the invoice is closed. So good question. So you would not be able to trigger a workflow on it natively in CRM because technically it's not there, right? But that's okay. That doesn't mean we can't do anything. If you're on QuickBooks Online, which I would assume you probably are if you're kind of building this integration, that's supported in Zoho Flow. And so I'm pretty confident you could have a little flow that triggers when an invoice is closed, fetches the proper customer and contact in CRM, and then you could even actually trigger the delivery of a CRM email template all through Zoho Flow. So you can do it, just not directly through the CRM Workflows UI because the data is not actually there.
All right, for our next question, Paul, after what over on Club Z, is asking a question about Ring Central and CRM. Love Ring Central and CRM, but please, is there some way of closing a Ring Central call pop-up? Most of the time they close easily, but other times they stay open and then they're on multiple of my machines. Basically, at that point, you were closing down the browsers on all the machines. Please help. I've reached out to Ring Central, but I think their help desk is being run by an AI system from hell, bent on damaging their business. It's an interesting thing. I don't even think it's a Ring Central thing, unfortunately, because they're using Zoho's telephony interface for that pop-up. So most likely this is a Zoho thing, although I do agree with you on Ring Central's help desk. But you can clear your cache. You can do what you're doing. Clearing cache is probably the thing we found that maybe puts it off the longest period of time.
Yeah.
But other than that, it must be. Are we seeing this? My guess is, guys, if it was part of the telephony integration that Zoho puts out there that the vendors go into, we see this with some other telephony vendors as well. Are we just seeing it with Ring Central? Are we seeing it with others? Do we know?
I just reported odds and ends. Kind of pops up randomly, but it is an issue. It's not just you, Paul. Like Brett's saying, really the best option is clear out the cache and cookies. That generally will sort things like this out. If not, it would probably be on Zoho's side of the house actually to get it resolved for you.
I just sounded like you were breaking up with Paul there for a minute, Tyler. It's not just you, Paul. It's me. No. All right, moving on to the next question.
All right. This one comes from, we're very honored, but African Prince, asking on the YouTube video, how to set up email signatures inside Zoho CRM new 2021. So I'm not sure how much we can keep the new in that title, but as far as making your signatures not send pictures as attachments, simple answer there is uploading it via URL. Whenever you insert an image, you get two options. Do you upload it or do you insert a link? And so you want to have a link to some live public service that the email signature can call from, rather than being actually uploading the file into Zoho Mail itself. And then the link can be viewed from anyone, anywhere, and it won't get dropped down into that attachments area.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused by this. I think if you actually go into Zoho Mail, into settings, into signature, and you put the image in there and you upload it, it should not show up as an attachment.
Depend on who's receiving it, what mail client they have.
It does.
Yeah. But the URL should always be safe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more a thing of the viewer than the sender. But if you have it there as basically it's if the href, because this is getting down to the HTML, but in the HTML, if the href is pulling from a link that anybody can look at, then it's going to be viewable. But if it's a link to like with it, like if it's a link to a specific like file being sent with it, then then there's a possibility that it could get plucked and put as an attachment rather than as an inline.
This one is from Patrick, and he says, "Hi there, thanks for this video. You spoke about feeding information of leads when they become opportunity in sale from Zoho CRM back to Google Ads, but how do Google Ads conversions get credited into Zoho CRM? Would you be looking at inquiry source equals Google Ads? Is there a requirement to link Zoho CRM within Google Ads to achieve this?" That's a great question. I mean, I'm going to zoom out a little bit because, I mean, this is really how you tie the gap. The answer to this is how you tie the gap between marketing and sales in general. And what you'll want to do here, Patrick, is set up UTM parameters for all the call to actions in your business. So if you want to start with what you're doing with Google Ads, great. But UTM parameters basically help you pass marketing information over to your sales system. So that'll include things like the source, the campaign, the content, Google Click ID, whatever information you want to pass over. And what you do is you just put that in the URL of the call to action. So within Google Ads, right, you click on a Google ad, there's a link that it's redirecting to. You'll want to throw in the UTM parameters at the end of that link. And if you need a tool to do that, just search UTM Builder Google. Google's got a tool for you. You put it in there, generate the link. And then from there, you've got to go to your form and you got to make sure that it's collecting UTM information. And once you select that, on the submission of a lead from that form, the form builder, you can use Zoho Forms for this. It'll actually grab the URL. It'll take the different UTM data that you've put in the link, and then it will pass it over to the CRM for you. So, I mean, that's kind of quick speak. It's a lot more setup than a 2-minute explanation. But if you set this up right, it's actually really helpful to see everything you're doing in marketing, right? Because then everything will pass over to leads. And then Tyler, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but within Google Ads integration natively within Zoho CRM, you set that up. You know, if you get Google Click ID over, I mean, that passes back into Google Analytics, into Google Ads and marks that as a conversion. Is that right?
It does,
Or,
but the plugin is very buggy. It's very buggy.
Yeah.
In theory, the native Google Ads plugin should do that. You're restricted to only using CRM web forms for it to work on the web capture side, which they're a lot less flexible than Zoho Forms. A lot of times what we do, Patrick, on the reporting anything, so everything Drew said on the inbound is totally on par. And the best way to do it is Zoho Forms. It's real easy. And I think we have videos on it on the channel on like how to capture those UTMs. What we generally end up doing reporting wise is actually pulling in Google Ads data to Zoho Analytics, because you get basically spend by day, by campaign, by ad group, right? And then your forms are capturing, you know, campaign, ad group, right? So we pull all that data into Zoho Analytics, blend it together, right? And then we can give you a variety of different reports, right? So you could look at, okay, the spend in January resulted in this number of leads in January. And then these deals sloped out over the next 6 months from those leads, all attributed back to January or attributed to when they closed, or, you know, you can start getting really clever with the reporting once you've pulled it into a BI tool. So that's oftentimes where we end up going with things.
Tyler, have you ever done it where it pushes, you know, like let's say a deal closes one is your conversion within Google Ads that you want to mark? You ever done it where from the CRM you make an API to call back to Google Ads? Because the only reason I think you might want to do that is if you wanted to do like a bidding strategy on conversion, you know?
Yeah, and Greg and I would have commented on that, but we're Bing experts. That's where really all of the market is these days. Guys that know Bing inside out, kind of bringing that data in.
Well,
you guys are the last of your
Bing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Bing is a close second actually for me. My favorite is Yahoo search above anything else.
Above it all.
Actually, whenever I want to know the question, something, I go to Yahoo Answers first, see if somebody's answered it there, and I ask my questions there, and just wait several weeks for some random person to give me some bad advice. Our next question comes from Edwin. This was in our YouTube Sales IQ Zopa tutorial from 2021, which also just seems like a lot of our questions today are coming from videos in 2020 and 2021. So algorithms pushing out our old stuff. They're asking, what is the Zoho Sales IQ Bot criteria router used for? And the criteria router is an action block. So when you're building a Zoho bot, it's similar to when you're using Zoho Flow, where there's or a CRM blueprint, where there's these sort of blocks that you can drag in and create your pathways that your customers can go. And so in the case of the Sales IQ Zoho bot, the criteria router is just simply it's an if-else statement being put into a nice little UI component where you drag it on there, and then you can set up different scenarios, different criteria based on what's been said in the conversation or what data you've collected from the person the bot is talking to figure out whatever the next action is going to be. Is it going to end the conversation, transfer them to an agent, send them an article or a link? Just depends. And you can have, more than, it doesn't just have to be an A or B pathway. You can have several different branches going off to all sorts of different pathways. And then you can have like a default criteria that if it doesn't meet any of those specific ones, then it just goes to some default pathway. And then next question, also for me, this comes from our 2021 Zoho Recruit tutorial. Surya asks, while associating candidates for job openings, I'm not able to view a blueprint for any candidate. Can you please assist me with this? And also, for another user, can you please help me with this? So I assume you mean that you want us that both you and another user are having the same issue. There's a couple of different things when it comes to blueprints of not seeing them. Could be that you'll want to check, is the blueprint published? Is it active? Also, if perhaps you've made some changes to a blueprint, even if the blueprint was published at one point, your blueprint might still be in draft mode for any changes you've made recently, and you need to republish it. And then the other thing you'd want to check is just what's the criteria that you have set up for why a record should go into a blueprint in the first place, because it could be that perhaps there's something about your criteria that you haven't actually met the requirements of the blueprint to actually be in the blueprint. And I can't quite, it's also possible that this is when a candidate, because for example, if your blueprint starts when a candidate is associated to a certain job, then they're not going to be in the blueprint until they get associated, rather than if you wanted a blueprint where a candidate isn't associated to a job and you wanted like a certain button to show up to associate them to the job, then that's just depends what criteria you're using to determine when they start on the pathway. So just you want to double check those, and if all the criteria look right, then just make sure that it's active, and then you'll need to go in, and it won't automatically apply to every single record. You may need to go into the record and maybe resave it or edit some other field on there to then kind of trigger it entering that blueprint after the fact.
I think this one is for me. Yeah. So you're going to watch me do some mental gymnastics here, because this is a big question. So there was kind of a preface to this question. But basically what's going on is, if I can say this name right, Rohit is collecting information throughout the lifetime of a deal. So as an opportunity arises for Rohit and his business, they're capturing information in a Google Doc. And the information is, why the transaction is occurring, what's going to go on in the transaction. And he's wanting to bring that into Zoho. And so one thing he asked is, hey, would it be a good idea to actually collect this in a custom module called cases? And what he wanted is, hey, could this cases module look up or associate to the lead? And then as the lead is converted, could it then associate to the contact or to the account? So that would be, there could be some ease of reference there. And the answer to that is totally, you can totally do that. So one way I would kind of think about this is exactly what was mentioned in the question, which is first you could put the information in a multi-line field within a custom module, and you could maybe break it up into 3 sections, right? Because there's 3 sections in the Word doc or the Google doc. There's the what, the why, the how. You could fill out information. What I don't like about that is it's not a great text editor. It's plain text. You're not getting like this rich text there. But you can do that. If you really wanted rich text, maybe you go into notes section. There's some things you could play around that kind of feels janky, but some things to think about. The important thing though for association. So if a lead is converted, you would want to create a custom workflow or custom function to reassociate the record from the lead over to the newly created account, deal, or contact, because that's not going to happen out of the box, right? So you want to make sure you do that. And basically what that would accomplish is you'd build the case file over time. And then once the lead is converted, it would then associate to the proper contact or deal or account or whatever you'd like to do from there. So those are some ideas to throw around. Again, that's kind of quick speak. So it's a little harder said than done, or harder done than said, but that's how I'd go about it if I was to do this. So how was my mental gymnastics? Is it okay?
Yeah, I think the only thing is as you do make this change, right, and think about putting it in CRM, it's a good opportunity to review that case file and see if anything can be carved out of big multi-line fields. Because you're moving out of a Word doc, right? Where in a Word doc, you're just going to type, but there might be an opportunity here to carve out some things that are pick lists, check boxes. And the only reason we'll give that advice is it will make it much easier to report on these types of things in the future, right? When you have some of them in like fixed option lists. So it's just kind of an opportunity, right? You've got this new thing you can do with your case files. It'd be worth kind of examining, how that might benefit you.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. And along with that, I mean, if you are to carve out certain data points that normally is just written out in a Word doc into Zoho, it'll make the approval process a lot easier. You can add validation rules so that people know that, certain data is not going to be taken for certain case studies, whatever it might be, or case files. So I think that's a great suggestion.
All righty, our next question. This is over in Club Zenatta. This was a video tutorial request. Do-it-yourself data enrichment via CRM, and it's kind of a request and an answer all in one. And Bodo asks, hey, Bodo, say hi to Gandalf for me, by the way. I want to handle all double opt-in processes in the CRM. So if you don't know what a double opt-in is, it's like a person says they want to subscribe to your newsletter, and then you send them usually an email that says, do you really want to do this? If so, click here to verify that it's really you, and now you've got the double opt-in. A tutorial using a lead gen form in Zoho Forms, and pass that data to the CRM where the magic happens. It would be useful. And then he says, this is how I would do it pretty much. In the CRM, I'll send out an email to the user, which includes a link to click to confirm the subscription. Enrich the data for the new lead in the CRM automatically. Send out lead management via email from the CRM after confirming the double opt-in. And finally, update consent status in data privacy. So what you're laying out there that you want to do is highly doable. It would take a little bit of work and a little bit of code on the back end to make that all happen. As I read through this, maybe use a form, right? Like they come in and then you send them a form, and the form's pre-filled and completely attached to that record. So you can do that. You can send out a form that's linked to the record, and you could say, please check this box and, submit, and they do that. And then that would update the data in the CRM, and then you could have a workflow that could automatically follow it up after that. And maybe once that box was checked, you could have another workflow that updated a box that said they're double opt-in, or whatever you want to do, move them into whatever segment you're going to want to start marketing to. There's a whole variety of things here. I think you could do it pretty easily with just a form, though. I would use and just have that auto fill out and auto update the CRM for you. That would be the, I don't know, guys. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think form would work perfect. You might, I think they added to Zoho Survey the ability to do an inline question in an email. You might get people to click it easier that way, but it's all the same. At the end of the day, you're going to pre-fill it. They're going to click. They're going to hit a submit button, and that'll satisfy your double opt-in requirement pretty easily. And then from there, like Brett's saying, whatever needs to happen next can be workflows, could happen in Zoho campaigns. That's just based on the nature of it. But the double opt-in is totally doable.
One other thing I'd mention here is, specifically it was mentioned that this is in the CRM, but let's say the communications that you're sending out were more on the marketing side, less on the sales side. There is an opt-in form just out of the box within Zoho campaigns that you can check out. So if you go in there, they'll have an opt-in section. You can just mark that, and that's a really easy workflow. Nothing custom you got to do, nothing you really got to configure. You just go in there and set that up. So something else to look at, but Bodo Priesterath has got the coolest name ever. Priesterath. I've never heard anything like that. I love that.
I know.
Very cool.
Alrighty, I think this one is for me. So this was asked by Andreas on a YouTube video, Zoho Analytics full product tutorial from 2022. I watched it all, but I still don't see the value. When is analytics or Zoho Analytics a good option instead of normal CRM analytics? Can you give us some real life examples? This is a good question. I kind of realized, for context, for those who haven't seen the video, I kind of run through setting up a data source, making some reports, putting them together on a dashboard. But I did use all CRM data. So I should do a webinar at some point that uses a couple different data sources, because that's really where Zoho Analytics, cuts above. So right out of the gate, it's more flexible for reporting on CRM data, even if you were just in there. But the big part about it is the ability to pull in non-CRM data. Or compare data. So a common usage of CRM might be to track sales against quotas, right? And, if you were listening earlier in the show, we were talking about a real estate firm wanting to have agents set their goals. Within the normal CRM analytics, you would have no way to really give your agents a dynamic progress against goal dashboard, right? Which is a pretty common use case that we found, right? Because you can't marry that data together without pulling it into analytics, using some SQL code to reformat the database or two tables into one, and then kind of display it that way. Another big use case for Zoho Analytics is for when you have reporting needs that split between multiple applications. So for a lot of clients that are in like managed services, right, they'll use CRM, they'll close the deal, kicks off an initial implementation that goes through Zoho projects. And then ongoing support under a service agreement will be logged inside a Zoho desk. And they'll want to have a report on their users' total time billings across all apps, right? Because let's say one day Drew is doing an implementation, the next day Drew is working on a support ticket in Zoho desk. Now we've got time logs in two different systems, right? And neither of those individual systems will be able to report on how much time did Drew log last week, unless we pull it all into a consolidated environment. So the two big things, Andreas, are flexibility and being able to manipulate your data and blend it from a variety of Zoho and non-Zoho sources.
And I think in CRM itself, Andreas, there are just a lot of reports you can't run that you want to run. There's a variety of things across modules and, maybe lead conversion analytics. And there are certain other things that, they're just not easily accessible from within the Zoho reporting module.
Yeah. And on top of that, I mean, if you're building reports in other applications, it's kind of nice to just have one place to go to. Zoho Analytics is where all your reports are. Because some teams, they'll be split across using Zoho CRM tabular reports, Zoho CRM Analytics, and then Zoho Analytics. It just makes your head spin. There's so many different places you can go to build a report in Zoho. So I like to, if my clients are already building reports in Zoho Analytics, I like to make it really clean, build a folder structure and make sure that's where we use, build all our reports. And what's nice about that too is then you can add a web tab to Zoho CRM, which is a window into analytics. So you don't have to leave Zoho CRM to see all your reports from across Zoho. So that's really nice as well. Yeah, Tyler, I think you wrapped that up really nice. It's way more robust than Zoho CRM Analytics, Zoho Analytics is.
But again, if you're getting what you need out of CRM Analytics, there's no pressure to use it, right? Like if you're in there and you're like, yeah, this is what I need, this is great, then it's not like anything's wrong with the reporting in CRM. It's just a little smaller in scope. I think we got one more.
I'm honored to have the last one here. How can a Zoho form capture the response data on collection? response date on collection. This is from Sandra. There is actually a option that you can select when you're inside of Zoho Forms. If you add a date field to a form, you'd want to hide it. But as you add a date form, there's a little checkbox and it will pre-populate that date with the date of submission. So basically what that allows you to do is you can capture the date that it's submitted on, and you can just integrate that right to a date field within Zoho CRM, and you're good to go. So pretty easy. Nothing too crazy there. So it's a little box. You'll have to scroll down, but you'll find it, Sandra, and we'll solve it for you.
All righty. Fantastic, guys. There is another AZAAZ in the bag. I think we kept this one under an hour, just barely. Making progress.
Maybe.
20 questions. It's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger. We had to pare this down from like 25 questions. So I don't know. I think this might be the maximum amount we'll be able to take. Who knows?
We'll have to figure out. Or we gotta pick up the pace one way or the other.
I know. Greg's got to stop cutting jokes, man. Just eating up all the extra. All the jokes you're taking, dude. I know.
Yeah. Let's get rid of the one thing people tune in for.
You.
Yes,
that is true. That's true. I know.
All
right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. If you would like to get in touch with us, just head over to zenatta.com and click on book a meeting.
And on the website is where you'll find complete episodes of our weekly podcast, The CRM Zen Show, where we cover all the news in the world of Zoho. If you'd like that news delivered to your inbox, please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to get that every single Monday. And as always, we would love and appreciate if you would like and subscribe on this video. That really does help us out. Make sure that future videos will show up in front of you when we release them. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time.